Going to start the recording now. Can you guys see on my screen our the SSO, the single sign-on at login.cengage.com?
Yes.
Okay, great. And so you guys have both been here before, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So as I'm sure you guys know, we have NGL Sync for MindTap for a lot of courses. The 11th edition of accounting, everything is in MindTap. It's nice because you can just add MindTap and you'll be able to get to simulations, to all the online working papers, to the ebook and the current edition. For the 10th edition, the previous one, that was the first time that we had MindTap as a solution, but we also had the previous online solution, which was called Applia Online Working Papers. Just so you know, the 10th edition was kind of strange because it had Applia, it also had MindTap, and then for any simulations or what we call AAO, Automated Accounting Online, that was actually all in a separate interface called See Now. So if you guys have been in MindTap a lot, you probably know the See Now app that's in a lot of our MindTaps, and it powers multiple choice questions and things like that. See Now originally was its own solution that was built specifically for accounting in higher ed. So when we had our 10th edition, you could have Applia Online Working Papers plus AAO or a simulation, which would be in another solution, and then maybe you had MindTap. So teachers have to log into multiple things. They have to get different access codes and get their students into the simulations and the online working papers. So the fact that we moved to having everything in MindTap for the 11th edition should make things easier. See Now, which is what the simulations are in for the 10th edition, is not accessible from NGL Sync right now. So you do have to come to the single sign-on at login.cengage.com. What you would do is, and you might have already done this, but I have the ISBN for our General Journal 10th edition book here. And I just would add that book to my instructor resource center. And the very first option that's up there, it says Automated Accounting Online. Automated Accounting Online is See Now for this book. It offers the Automated Accounting Online, but also the simulations. And I don't know if you need to know this for your presentation, but just so that you're aware, in the 10th edition and several editions before that, there was another product in addition to the online working papers or a simulation that teachers could buy for $10, and it was called AAO, Automated Accounting Online. So in accounting courses, teachers are usually trying to do a couple of things. They're trying to make sure that their students know the basic concepts of accounting and they're getting them through an entire accounting cycle or fiscal year of a business. That's the goal, so that students can see what a real business would do over the course of their fiscal year. So while they're trying to teach them that theory and that information from their book, students are practicing those skills in working papers, whether that's the online working papers or in print. And when students are doing that, they're making their own calculations. They'll probably have a calculator next to them. If they're using the print version and our online version, a calculator is built in. As students get further through the book, they're working in multiple tabs of their journals, and they actually have to take information from one part and post that in another section of their journal. When real accountants work on this, they're not doing everything kind of manually like that. They're using a professional software like QuickBooks or Excel or Peachtree. It used to be a popular one. It's now called Sage 50. And so a lot of accounting teachers want their students to get experience with professional software as well. And really the key term to use for that is that professional software auto posts. Our online working papers do not do that because students are supposed to still be learning these skills. They're kind of doing everything. Think about like long division versus just using a calculator in a way. But teachers do want students to know what it's like to use a professional software that they might use in their careers. So one reason our Century 21 accounting book is so popular is because teachers can use QuickBooks or Excel or Sage 50 Peachtree with those assignments if they want. The other option that they had in the past was AAO, which was our own simulation of a QuickBooks or an Excel. And so AAO for the 10E were actually some end of chapter problems that students could complete in this software. And then the simulations are doing the same thing. The simulations are simulating professional accounting software like QuickBooks or Excel, except a simulation is a full capstone to a section of the book. So students are working through an entire fiscal year. So that's what the simulations do. They give students kind of a capstone to practice the full fiscal year at once. Teachers might give students 2 weeks to do this, depending on how long it takes them. But this, for the 10th edition, was all built in C Now. So sorry for that long description, but if you get confused by teachers saying, what about AAO? I just want you to kind of know where that's coming from. But to add the simulations for the 10th edition book, you actually do select Automated Accounting Online. It's the first option when you add the book to your course. The other options you'll see are for Applia and then for MindTap for the 10th edition. So I'm just adding the top one, adding that to my courses. And then I'll see this below the book as an online solution that I can jump into. And it will say Automated Accounting Online. I know this is a little confusing because the simulation is a separate purchase from AAO, but this is how it is labeled in here. So I would just click on this link to get into See Now for my simulations. And you probably haven't seen See Now before. Like I said, it was originally built for accounting, but it is the app inside MindTap that powers most of our multiple choice questions in other MindTap courses. Now, See Now is very, very thorough. If you ever get stuck or confused, it does a good job of giving you options. It even will say like most likely option next and kind of leads you where to go. So it's a nice thing to demo because it does kind of make that easy. This interface also has a lot of videos throughout the interface itself. So if it's asking a teacher to do something, there's usually a little video button that they can watch to learn more about it. It's a nice feature that I wish we had in MindTap, actually. So,
Abby, I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
In the 11th edition accounting book, I understand you would go to NGL Sync. Is there a See Now app and you click on that and that's how you get to the simulations in the 11th edition, or am I jumping ahead?
So I will show you how to do that.
Okay.
You would think that would make sense, but See Now, this product actually requires Flash. And so when we created the simulations for the 11th edition, we didn't want it to have to require Flash because very shortly no browsers will be able to use Flash. So our new simulations were actually built in a completely different interface, and they really were built to be integrated within MindTap. So they're actually a plank within the learning path for those ISBNs with simulations that they would click into. But I'll show you what those look like after this. That's easier because it's more MindTap-like. Whereas See Now is a little different from what you're used to probably. So this brings me to my home screen now because I've created See Now courses for lots of different things. I have lots of different options, but you would come in here and you would just click courses. If this is the first time you've been in here, which it may be for you guys, you won't have all these lists of courses. These are courses that I've created in See Now in the past. So that's why I have all these here. It allows me to jump into my other See Now courses. This would be empty for you and you would just see this big create a new course button. So the first thing that teachers would do is they would go into courses and create a new course. This is easy enough. And when we're doing a simulation, the nice thing is the simulation is a template that was created by the product team. So teachers don't have to go in and create individual assignments. They're kind of preloaded for them. But what they need to make sure they do on this first step on creating a course, they're choosing the process. So instead of building manually, that means I'd be pulling in all my assignments and choosing them. I'm going to copy from an existing course, and I'm using the second option called Modify a Template Course. Now that PDF that I talked about has these few steps in here so that you can remind yourselves easily, and I'll email that to you guys afterwards. But see how every option has a little video that says See Now. It's kind of nice. I mean, in a demonstration, you could open up these videos or just allow the customers to know that they're there if they need a reminder on how to do things or what different settings mean. So I'm modifying a template from a course designed by Cengage. I'm going to click Continue. And then at this point, it's asking me what template I want to add. Now, I have quite a few options because I have a lot of different accounting books added to my resource center. If you just, for the first time, came into your resource center and added the book that I added, you would only see the options for your book. But what I want to click here is red carpet events. So just so you know, for both the 10th and 11th edition, the simulations are the same. There was a 10th edition and a 10th edition update. For all of them, it's red carpet events, authentic threads, and digital diversions. Those are the three. Our 11th edition has a new interface, but students are still working through the same data sets and with the same accounts and all of that. So because I added that book, I have red carpet events, digital diversions, and authentic threads as options. These are the three simulations. So depending on what they purchased, you would want to create that. Most schools, the most popular is actually authentic threads. That's the second simulation. Usually that's the most popular because as schools go through, by the time they get to the eighth chapter or so, sometimes they think that their students aren't ready to go through the entire accounting cycle. They want them to work through the course a little bit more. So authentic threads is usually where teachers get to by the end of the first year. But red carpet events is the second most popular, and then digital diversions. So I'm going to do this with red carpet events just because that's the first simulation. I'm selecting red carpet events, and you'll see when I do this, it does give me those three simulation options again. So I'm going to select red carpet events, and then I just have to create a course name. Wherever there's an asterisk, I have to create something. So I'm just going to call this Capstone Simulation 1, or whatever I would want to name this. I'll give a start and end date, very similar to what you do to MindTap. So I'm going to say it starts today and ends at the end of November. And then you have some other options here. Teachers can add their syllabus to the course, or add a link if there's a website that they want them to go to. You don't have to do any of the rest. So as long as you select the product, the simulation, give it a title and a start and end date, you can click Create Course. And now once I've done this, my course is created. You'll see where it pops me up here. It says on the right, likely next step. Maybe create an assignment or modify dates or other actions. CNOW does this a lot where it'll say, okay, you just did this, you probably want to go here, which is nice. Since I created this course, you can see that I have my registration URL that students are going to go to. This is very similar idea to what we do with MindTap, right? I would send this URL to my students. Once they go there, they can register and they'll enter their access code that they've purchased to get into my course. There's also student registration instructions here that I'd be able to print those out and give those to my students with step-by-step instructions. So I'm going to click back into the Courses tab again. Again, this is going to bring up my library of all of my courses. But I want to look at the one that I just created. What did I call that? Simulation, Capstone Simulation 1.
Yes.
So from this screen, whenever I click courses, again, I can remind myself of my course key. I can print those instructions for my students, or I can send an email to my students for them to get into this course. I can also see my start and end dates. If I click into that course, now that I have that course selected, if I go to my assignments tab, that's where I'll now be able to see the assignments that are here. So all of the assignments that are part of the simulation are pre-created because I created the course with that template. I could go into create an assignment and create assignments, but there's really no need with these simulations because I copied it from a template. All of the parts of the simulation are here. So what you see here, the assignments that we have, the simulation itself is in 5 parts. The nice thing about this is that the simulations are broken up, so the student, it's not like the student's going to be working on a simulation for 2 weeks, start at the beginning, make an error at the very beginning, and then get to the entire end of the simulation after 2 or 3 weeks, and they get a bad grade because they made this one error at the beginning that changed everything they did throughout the rest of the simulation. They have 5 different parts, so they'll get 5 different grades throughout the course of the simulation. And once you move on from part 1, if I made some mistakes, my teacher could allow me to go back in and redo that. But let's say that they didn't, or I don't have time, I have to move on to part 2. I'm starting over basically at part 2. I have just as much a chance of getting a 100 as any other student. So the fact that it's broken up into parts is helpful for that reason. The other three things you have here, these are think like an accountant activities. These are activities that are found throughout the book. As part of the simulation, teachers do have access to these. They are not part of the online working papers. So these are other assignments that are found throughout the book. The teachers either will want to assign these or not. It's very likely if they just bought the simulation, they're not going to use those. So I can delete any of these things by selecting it and clicking delete. I can also select any of these and modify their due dates. So right now, everything's available at the start of my course and due at the end. If I want to modify any of those settings, I can click select and modify the dates for that part of my assignment. The other thing you can do here with these simulations, notice there's a print feature. See, now is the only solution that I've seen this where you have, if you click print, like I want to print out part 5 of the simulation, I have a million options, and accounting teachers love this. This is something I'm looking to get put into our accounting MindTap product in the future. But this allows teachers to print the assignment only. So if they do want a print version of that simulation, maybe they have a student with an IEP who has to do it in print and cannot work online, or maybe they just want to have that print option for students, they can print that whole part of the simulation. They can also print the assignment with keys. So if they're asking where the solutions are, for the 10th edition, there are solution keys that are usually purchased with the simulation, so the teacher should already have one. But if they don't and they want to print out additional keys, they can select that option here. And then they have lots of options how they want to see it in one column or two, if they want to sort in a different order. There's so many options here, but it's just good to know that they can print these out and they can print out the solutions by clicking that print option. If I want to edit one of these, I'm just going to show you some of the features. If I click edit for this part of the simulation, you've probably seen this in the See Now app in MindTap. It does a similar thing. I can edit information, I can edit the actual content of what's being delivered, and I can edit options. Editing information will basically be allow me to change the title of that assignment. So right now it's called Part 5. If I wanted to name it, Week 3 or Tuesday or something like that, I would click Edit Assignment Information. Editing the content will actually allow me to delete, move, or change individual tasks that are in the simulation. I do not recommend this for a simulation because each part builds on each other. If a teacher changes something or removes a portion of a part, it really won't make sense with the simulation. So while you can do this, I don't really see any value in showing teachers how to do that for a simulation. What they may want to do is edit the assignment options. So if I select that option, it'll bring me up to a window that will allow me a whole bunch of settings on how this is delivered to the student and how it's graded. So you can see the first option is how many times can my students take this. The standard setting is unlimited. If my student, as long as they're completing it in their availability and due dates, they can keep trying the simulation over and over to get a better score. You can change this from 1 to 10 times all the way up to unlimited. So there is a chance some teachers might only want students to have 1 or 2 attempts. Again, note how nice See Now is that every time I have a setting option, there's always a little question mark that's going to give me a description of what these options mean. So that's really helpful. You have a printing option of whether you want students to be able to print this out as they're working on it. There's a prerequisite option. So right now the standard is students cannot work on part 5 until they've completed part 4. They can't complete part 4 until they've completed part 3, and so on. That's the standard setup and probably how teachers want it. If for some reason you wanted students to be able to jump ahead, you could change this setting. There is a grading. So right now this is 1 point. Even though students are doing many things in this one part of the simulation, it is going to calculate every piece of information that they add, whether they do it correctly or not. It is going to count that score, but it is only set up as 1 point. If I wanted to change this to 10 points or whatever to match my grade book, I can do that. And then if I am allowing multiple attempts, this is just saying, what will the scoring do for the multiple attempts and how much will it record? So while students can do this an unlimited amount of times, CNOW is really only going to be able to record 20 sets of information at once. I feel like that's a lot. So this was just deciding which results you want to be able to see for how many attempts and which one it'll take, right? So this option, keep one result, overwrite on each take. That means every time they take it, their most recent is going to be the score that they get. Out of the 20 times that they've done it, use the one that was the best score, use the one that was the most recent, or merge their score. So every time that they take it again, they're adding to their overall percentage. So teachers have tons of options within CNOW, and really that's because accounting teachers love detail and they like having options for their grading. And so that's why CNOW offers all of these things. Under this questions for each student on each take only, no need to change this. This simulation doesn't really have the feature that would change this. So I would tell teachers to keep this the same. Feedback. As students are working through the simulation, as they work through different tasks within that simulation, they do have a chance to click check my work and see how they did. That is set to unlimited, so students can use that as much as they want. The teacher doesn't want them to see the feedback, they can change that, or they can only give them, a certain amount of times that they'll be able to see that feedback. Everything else you don't really have to worry about, but you can see you can change all of these things to how the teacher would want it. And the nice thing about CNOW is, let's say that the teacher took several minutes to, change the settings for part 1 of the simulation. Now I'm gonna have to go through 4 more times and do this again. If you do change these things, I'm gonna change something so I can show you. You can actually save this as a new set of rules. And so let's say that I got this how I want. I'm going to save this as a new set, and I'm going to call it my simulation set. Okay. Now that I've done this and I've saved that part, now if I go in and I edit part 4 and I'm editing the options, instead of taking the time of clicking through all of these different things, I can just select my simulation set from the top of the screen. It's updating to those settings that I saved, and I'll click done to save that. Okay, so teachers might not want to go in there and change anything at all, but it's nice to be able to show them what those options are and that they can change them. So do you guys have any questions about how you set up a simulation or create the course?
Abigail, does the edit content, the one you told us not to tell them not to use,
yep,
wouldn't that negate the automatic grading?
It could, yeah. I just wouldn't change it at all. If I go in here, if we do something like this, the problem with that is if let me see if it even really shows you. So this is the one thing to be able to show this, you need to make sure to click allow to have your browser run Flash. But when I'm in here, I can see what the question looks like. And each part is kind of set up as one question. So this is all the red carpet part 4. I actually don't know if this would even allow you to edit it. Because as I can show you here, when I said that what this is doing is it's simulating what software like QuickBooks or something like that would look like. That's why it's kind of built in an assignment like here. It isn't multiple choice questions that you're changing like you might normally in CNOW. Let me see, can I even edit it? Yeah, see, it won't even let me edit that content, or does it? No, sorry, the name you selected doesn't support editing. So they could go in there to be able to view it, but I can show you they also are able to view it as a student in a different portion of the course.
Okay.
You can change point value, but you were able to do that where I showed you under edit options as well. So there's really no point in them coming in here, I guess. Okay. Any other questions about setting this up? Okay, I'll show you guys what the assignment looks like from the student side. And again, I'm assuming none of us are professional accountants. A lot of you might know more about personal finance and accounting than I do. But you can, show them a little bit what the simulation is going to look like. to do this, I'm in under assignments, and I would just click one of the parts of the simulation. Let's go to part 1. And then it gives me some options. I can preview this as a student. And then again, I can edit these, or I can print the assignment. I'm going to preview as a student. It does give students a little bit of information at the beginning. It's telling them you shouldn't use the back button on your browser or refresh your browser. That is going to kick you out of the simulation. It may not save if you do that. You shouldn't leave it open for more than 2 hours. Sometimes when students are in things like this, they accidentally click buttons on their browser that kicks them out. So it's just making them aware of that. I'm going to start assignment now. And so just so you know, for the 10th edition simulations, I cannot really complete the simulation on my own right now. And why is that? I don't have the full simulation. When a school purchases the simulation, even if they're purchasing the automated version, they're still actually going to receive a packet, a little envelope per code that they purchase. And that envelope has invoices, receipts, and it's actually giving students physical copies of what you might have if you were doing your own accounting, where you have a bunch of receipts and you're looking at those transactions and you're taking those transactions to then post that into your ledger system. So as I'll show you in our new simulations, students do not need any print resources. You do not get a packet of receipts and invoices shipped to you. It actually is within the simulation. But for the 10th edition and before that, even those teachers are purchasing an access code to get their students online, they're also receiving a little envelope for each student that has those resources that students are going through beside their computer as they're typing in the information. So the difference between the manual or the completely print simulations and this is that in the manual print simulation, students also get that envelope, but then they have print ledgers that they're actually writing everything down, and they never have to look at a computer. The value of this one is that you are doing things online. It's simulating what it's like to have QuickBooks, and it will auto-grade and provide instant feedback for students. So I can't complete the simulation as is without that information, but you can see in this interface, just to quickly show, they're giving the students some notes here that there is additional information like step-by-step instructions available for this, and that you can view those. It's just reminding you that you must post your journal transaction before editing, otherwise the transaction you entered will be lost. So that's when we're talking about auto posting. You're typing in the information, you click post, and that actually posts it to all parts of your accounting cycle. So over on the left-hand side, well, first of all, I want to mention there is a little calculator here. So if students do need to do any calculations, they always have that available. They do have the check my work feature. That's because I did not change that setting. I allowed my students to get click this as many times as they want to see how they're doing. Down here are instructions. So this is what it was noting that there were instructions for me. There are some transactions here, and I would be able to record these transactions, but again, students would have these transactions as actual receipts and source documents in a print envelope that they would get. So I'm actually going to put this over here and see if I can work on one of these transactions. So this says on June 1st, they received cash from the owner, Morgan Hartley, as an investment of $5,000. So over here on the left-hand side, I would actually open up these different windows. This is my company information. I see that I'm working as a sole proprietorship. The company's name is Red Carpet Events. I'm reporting by fiscal period. It's all good information. In the classify accounts, these are all the accounts that I have within my company. This is something I'll definitely have to be looking at as I'm working. So I'm going to click, I'm going to maybe keep that here. I'll just minimize that window to keep it down there for me. Here's some required accounts I'm required to use. And you can see as I'm adding these windows, they do exist down here so that I can bring them up again. My account subtotals, I don't need to look at that now. And then there's even graphs. So as I'm working throughout the simulation, I'll be able to come back and see how the work that I'm doing is affecting my income statement, which is an important skill that teachers want. And then there's some other information that I would be able to graph out once I've been working through the simulation. So these are nice visuals that help students see where they're on track. And it also helps them see how what they're doing is affecting the overall business. Over in banking, I now have my cash receipts. I have my cash payments journal. And in the general ledger, I have my chart of accounts, my vendor list, my general journal that I'm working in, maintaining accounts, and so on. My income statement. So throughout that simulation, I'll actually be working on all of this. And again, while I do have a little window of some transactions through here, most of what I'm doing is going to be decided on that little print envelope that I've got. And then I've got a whole bunch of reports as well. So if I do click help here, it does kind of help students learn where they can go for technical support. It kind of helps them, reminds them about the information that they have on each portion of the simulation. So if I'm under general ledger and I want to remind myself what the general journal transactions are, it's going to show me what those transactions look like, and it's also going to give me some steps for how to add a new entry and add a new transaction. So this is really helpful if students get stuck, if they not sure what everything is supposed to do. They can always click help to get that information. So I'm going to go into general journal, and I'm going to go into general ledger. This is where I'll be recording most of my transactions for the most part. You can see when I'm in here, again, I can minimize this window, I can maximize it to fill my whole screen, and I can actually try to look at a couple windows at once. So this isn't the best functionality for this, but teachers do like this, that I can pull up multiple windows and I can try to look at multiple ones at once, because sometimes I'm pulling information from one place and taking it to another. Okay. So right now it's showing me there's no activity, but I can print any of these as well. So students also have print buttons. I can copy this and put this onto a spreadsheet if that helps me out. And I'm looking at my different accounts. So does this make sense? I mean, I think you don't have to work through a problem. I mean, the teacher could if they want, but what you want to show them is that there's a calculator. There's a check my work button that will give students some feedback. There is some instructions that students can look at, but they really do need that envelope of source documents to get started. And they also have this help button where they can kind of review the different aspects of the simulation and how to do individual skills. The other thing that I would show is just to open up a few windows and show them how they can be minimized and kind of held over here for when you need them later, and how you can kind of adjust windows to be able to see two things at once. So as students are working through, this will not be automatically saved either. They should click save every once in a while they're going through. As they complete individual skills that count as part of their grade, they will see their assignment score auto-calculate as they're working in here. So they should always know what their score is as they're working. Okay. Do you guys have any questions about this? The other big thing is Flash. They have to have Flash allowed on their browser. Okay. Are you guys ready to move on to the 11th edition?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you this in NGL Sync, as we do have MindTap and NGL Sync. You guys might have courses already, but I'm going into my business demo course that I've created. Now, I just want to note, have you guys ever seen, I mean, do you guys create your own courses, or does the sales consultant help you create the course and then you use it to demo? Or do you come in here and create your own?
We create our own.
You create your own. So something else I'm going to give you, which is very helpful, is our master ISBN spreadsheet for accounting. I don't know if any of you guys have seen this before, but because we have two versions of the book. There's a multi-column and a general journal version of the book. Because we have MindTap with and without simulations, there's a lot of ISBNs. And this spreadsheet actually shows all of the ISBNs for accounting from the 11th edition back to the 8th edition. So you would be able to find those 10th edition simulation ISBNs here, the ISBN of the print book that you would need to put into the login.cengage.com to be able to see those simulations. And in the 11th edition, like I said, the simulations are now in MindTap. They are not a separate product. So that means that schools cannot just purchase the simulation and not purchase MindTap. Every time you have MindTap for accounting, you have the full ebook, you have all the online working papers, and then you decide whether you want simulations or not. So we do not have the functionality to have a MindTap course and then add a simulation after the fact. Teachers should know whether they want to purchase a simulation or not up front, and then they have to use the correct ISBN that includes the simulation or combination of simulations that they want. So why I'm going to give you this spreadsheet is because there are a lot of MindTap ISBNs. You've got your ISBNs for the multi-column versus the general journal. And then here, as you can see, you've also got MindTap with 1 simulation, with 2, and then the MindTap that has all 3 simulations in there. So if you're demoing this or doing a presentation, I would always use one of these 2 ISBNs, either the general journal or the multi-column that includes all 3. Then you can be sure that you're showing a product that includes everything. And that would be the easiest thing to show. So what I'm going to show you right now is this MindTap, the general journal that includes all 3 simulations. And I have this course right here. Open this up. And so some of the differences that you'll note from the 10th edition to the 11th, number 1, it does not require Flash. It's built into HTML5. That means it would work on a Mac, a PC, on any browser. You could use it on an iPad if you want to. I wouldn't recommend it doing on your phone, even though it'd be possible. But the simulations, now let me see if I can remember this. There are 3 simulations, and the simulations, for the most part, come after the parts. So the very first simulation, Red Carpet Events, falls after Chapter 8. So I would have to open Part 1, and it's the last thing in Chapter 8 in this MindTap. If I'm showing Authentic Threads, that appears at the end of Part 2, so after Chapter 17. And if I'm showing Digital Diversions, the very last one, let me just see. Digital Diversions is after Part 3, I guess. Yes, after Chapter 22. So we don't even have a simulation that covers the last 2 chapters of the book, but most people don't get to those chapters anyway. So they fall right in the learning path under the part folder that they're associated with, and they'll be the very last thing in that folder.
Abigail?
Yep.
Where did you say the one for Red Carpet was? After what chapter?
Chapter 8 in
Okay.
Part 1. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So that's where I am right now. Just so you know, the book is organized by lessons within chapters, and chapters are within parts. So there are a lot of assessments. There's working papers for every lesson within a chapter, within a part. You take, chapter tests, and you also take part tests. So the simulations come way at the end after the part test. If I click the little arrow, I can see again, here's my 5 parts of the simulation. So these are calling them assignment 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, rather than part 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 that you saw in the past. I'm going to open up one of these assignments. Now, again, it gives me a little bit of information here. Yeah. I'm going to click Start Assignment Now. This will open in a new window. So whenever teachers are doing this, they need to make sure, number 1, that their pop-up blocker is turned off. A lot of times, this is the same thing for SAM, for computing. Teachers will say, this thing doesn't even work. Nothing's happening. Usually that's because you have a pop-up blocker turned on your browser. So the first time they come in here, you might get a notification about the pop-up blocker. You have to click that and click Allow, and always allow for this site so that the window will open. So I can adjust this and make it fit my whole screen. The simulation, each part every time that the students start, they can use this little tour that kind of shows them how to get started with the interface. I'll just walk through it now with you. It's going to show them on the right-hand side of the screen. This is going to give them their task instructions and their assignments. In the 10th edition, this is the kind of thing that they would find in that little envelope that they have shipped to them. Those envelopes give them their task instructions. It shows them what the transactions are through receipts and invoices and checks and all the other paper products that you use in accounting. In this simulation, the tasks are on this right-hand column, and I'll also always have access to my source documents through this. So that's why I don't need a print envelope. It's showing me I can expand or collapse this if I want to make these instructions bigger. They are a little small to start with. And it's just telling me to read the instructions before I move on. Again, this button opens up the source documents. Those are the same source documents that you would get in print if you got the older version of the simulation. And it's just showing me how I would want to look at one of these source documents to find out what transaction is going on. So whenever I open up a source document, I have both the transaction description. It's telling me basically what happened. I received cash from Morgan Hartley of $5,000. But then if I click the source document, it will actually show me an image of that file. I have a calculator, just like I did in the other version of the simulation. And I have save. So because this is built in HTML5, it does auto save, but students should click save every once in a while just to be sure. Just so you know, if students do accidentally click out of this window, everything should be saved, but to assure that it is, they still should click the save button. Submit is what they would do when they are completely done. So I can see right now I'm on one of 5 instructions that I'll be working through to start. I don't want to click submit until I'm completely done with this. If I'm working on it and I have to leave because the period's over, I'm going to come back and work on it tomorrow, then I would want to click save and then close the assignment. I don't want to submit until I want to send the whole thing for a grade. Check, this is the check my work feature. It allows me to check my score. It'll update my score and I can see how well I'm doing. And this additional options menu where I can change the text size and a few other things for ADA compliance. And then there's also a help feature, which was similar to what you saw in the past. So over here, that's all the right-hand tab. On the left-hand side, this is where I'm going to be working in the simulation. The left-hand side, this is a hamburger menu, so when I click on it, I can then see these different options. In this part of the simulation, I'm going to be working in my company and banking. I'm not getting to sales or inventory or payroll, so that is all kind of faded out. In the simulation for the 10th edition that you saw, you can get into anything at any time. Sometimes once you click into it, it'll say, well, we don't have this information yet, so there's nothing to show. In this simulation, it's only going to allow students to get into what they have to get into for that simulation. But we call these on the left-hand side different modules. So throughout this part, you know, students will be able to see their basic company information, and they're starting with a banking module. And then as they work through, they'll start working in the general ledger. They'll incorporate purchases and inventory and more things like that. Reports are very similar to what you saw in the last simulation as graphs. It allows students to see visual representations of what they're doing and how their business is working. When I collapse, this is just showing that you can collapse that menu again, and then you're selecting your module that you're in. Once you select one of these modules, like banking or a company, then over across this x-axis at the top, you're going to have different options. And these are things that you're going to be looking at to complete that banking module or that general journal module. So here, you know, it shows me that I'm in the banking, I believe, and I have my tasks. This is what I'm going to work through. Through these tasks, when I'm doing banking, I'm going to have to look at maintaining accounts, vendors, customers, my general journal, and generate closing entries. So I'll move through those, and my instructions will help tell me where to go. This is just showed the general journal window, how I can add a new entry by clicking the Add New Entry button. And similar to that last simulation, I'm going to have a lot of windows that I'm looking at. So if I want to kind of hold those to be able to get back to them quickly, when I minimize them, they're actually going to be down here for me to be able to get to them. And it's neater than what you saw before. Actually, it kind of does a visual carousel so you can more quickly get to the window you're expecting to see. The last thing, this dashboard at the top, this is a dashboard similar to what you would have in QuickBooks, the professional software on your home screen. It gives you a couple of quick graphs and views of how your company is doing. And so while looking at the dashboard is not part of the simulation, students aren't required to do it. I think it's a good thing to have students do every once in a while to see how their work is changing and affecting their company. And it's also a neat way, I think if I was a teacher, at the end of each day of the simulation, I would be doing that simulation as well, and I would share on the screen the dashboard of my company and then ask the rest of my students to look at their dashboard and see if they're on track. Here are general instructions. They can always get back to these if they need to on how to save. And now we're in the module. So what you do here, the nice thing that there are instructions, it's telling me to, first of all, ensure that the system date is set to June 1st, 2022. It is set to that date, so we're good. I move through my instructions, and you can tell sometimes these instructions get pretty complicated. There's a lot that I'm going to be doing here. And this is really just showing me how I'm going to be doing things. I'm going to be looking at my source documents. I'm going to be looking at a transaction. I can actually open this document right here. Is a receipt. I can expand this document. I can download it. I can actually download this file and print it out. So even though students are not getting a printed envelope of all these source documents, if the teachers want them to have a print version and practice looking at print documentation, they can print any of these out as they need to, or they can expand them. So I'm going to be looking at this. I received cash from Morgan Hartley. That's the first step. And then I'm going to be going into my tasks, my general journal, and I'm going to be adding a new entry. So on this source document, I'm going to have to find the date. Yes, it was on June 1st that this happened. My date is correct. I'm going to put my account number. I have to insert a debit or a credit. And I know I'm not going to do this right, but I think that this is just supposed to come from cash. You'll notice as I start typing in an account, it actually gives me a drop down. This is similar to what would happen in QuickBooks. You can choose the account that you're getting, and then you would select the amount that you put in here. So 5,000. Great. I entered that in, but now because I'm in professional software, I want to post this. So I'm going to click post. And right now it's telling me that my journal entry is out of balance. That's because we have to have this balanced. So I have to add another entry. No. Cash. Yes. No. So inserting my debit, cash. I went through here and I got this all correct at one point, but now I'm just needing to remind myself. Cash. 5,000. And then capital. This so my debits have to match my credits, right? So, and that happened. Now I'm going to post. Now it's posted it. Did I get it correct? Let's see. I can always click check to check my score. Proceed. And I did not do it correctly. I have 13 errors and I still have missing items. So the fact that I did that, that wasn't correct. I could use that information to go back and work on this. So what I do want to show you is, as students will work through these instructions, they'd be looking at their source documents, they'll be posting into their journal, they can check their work. I'm going to click save. I'm going to click submit and show you what it looks like when a student submits this assignment. So when students submit, they get this report. And this is awesome because teachers can also see this report. And we call this a click stream report. What this is showing is it's showing everything I was supposed to do. And it's showing me the status of whether I got it correct or not. So the only things I got correct were things that were supposed to say 0 and have nothing done to them. That's why I still got a 0%. So I can see everything that I was supposed to do and what was incorrect. But then the other thing I can do is if I click stream report right here, this shows me every single action that I did. It's actually cataloging that. So if I type anything, if I click anything, the system is tracking what I've done, and it can show my teacher list by list what I did. So let's say that I submitted this and I thought I did it correct and I got a 0%. And my teacher says, well, what did you do? You know, they can go in here and see every single thing that I did. And right now it's showing me if there are irrelevant actions that I've done, it will even show me those as opposed to actions that were relevant to the simulation. I can look through those modules and see, kind of filter what I'm looking at here. But the other thing I can do is when I do make incorrect actions, I have this playback button, and this was actually recording what I was doing as a student, and it's showing you with that little mouse exactly where I clicked, what I typed. And so there's no way that the teacher has to be confused about why a student got something wrong or where they're getting their error. They can watch this video. I could speed this up if this is taking too long. I could restart it, or I could pause. So this is a great tool for a teacher to see what the student's doing wrong and then show them where they went wrong and have them go back into that simulation and try again. So that's the reporting that they would get. Now for a teacher to see that reporting, because I was just in there taking the assignment kind of as a student, and then I got to see that report. For the teacher to see that simulation report, I would have to go into the Progress app. And once a student completes a simulation module, which I believe I did do that as a student in here, this course does have student data. So if you want to use this course, let me know and I'll give you access. So once I do go in here, I believe it was after chapter 8. Here I had one student who attempted the first assignment. When I click into that assignment for the simulation, I can see both of these students attempted it once. One student got a 46 and one got a 53. If I click into that student, I can see their first attempt and I can view that attempt. Viewing that attempt will bring up that reporting. I believe it would bring up the reporting. Okay, this is just giving their score. I apologize. I thought that was what would give you that report. Let me just try something else. Because the simulations aren't powered by an app like other things are. They're kind of their own thing. Okay, well, if I don't figure this out, I'm going to figure it out and show you guys. But the teacher does have access to that report as well. Just let me make sure that this isn't in here. No. Let me try one more time. Right after chapter 8. Assignment 1. You know what? I think, it's saying detailed review is not available for this activity. I'm gonna have to look at that. I apologize. But you can show those reports once you go through and you submit as a student. But, aha, no, okay. Never mind. I'll go through and I'll check how teachers can find that out. Okay. I'll follow up with that information for you guys. Do you have any other question about these simulations? Nope.
Would that review be under analytics?
You know, that's a good question. I feel like I've found this before. So if I click into one of my students here. No, this still gets me to the...
So I have a question. I know how you showed us that, well, you said with the 10th edition, they're going to get a packet that's got the key, but also how they have that option to print the keys. In this version, how do they see the answers?
Good question. So there is a simulation key for the 11th edition that I believe is in the companion site. So if we go into the resources for the book and we go into instructor downloads, you got solutions for a lot of things. For the working papers, that would be in MindTap, crossword puzzles, chapter and part test, chapter part test solutions. Let me see, do we have a print version of these? So I feel like, I guess right now, I'm going to have to ask the product team if they are going to put a digital solution file up here, because they did for everything else. But for right now, the 10th edition simulations are the same content as the 11th edition. So teachers could purchase those keys, the simulation teachers keys, if they had these ISBNs, or sometimes the reps sample them to them. But that's actually a really good question, because we have the solutions to everything else in MindTap on here. So I'm wondering why they didn't do that for this as well.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't seem right if I bought the simulation that I don't get the key with it. Why would I have to buy the key separately?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure reps are just sampling it to them, but I'll ask them to have that, if we can have that added, because we have the solutions for everything else in MindTap on here.
Right.
Good question.
It's just teacher and me talking.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Thinking, well, shoot.
And then the other thing I'm going to look up is how the teacher pulls the clickstream report. I'm sure it's just some little thing I'm not doing right. It's going to drive me crazy. I thought it was view, because normally when you view attempt, it will show you.
Right.
Then it's telling me that a detailed view isn't available. I wonder why that is.
Well, but you can also impersonate the student and go in as them and see it anyway.
You could, but it also should allow you to not have to go into a different account, you know?
Yeah.
It should do it faster than that. But that is true. Once the student has completed the simulation, if they click on that simulation again, it'll automatically bring them to that report, and then there's a button that says retake. And if they want to retake it, then they'll be able to start over again.
Oh, okay.
But otherwise, when they come in, they'll be able to see the report that they had. Okay, so I'm going to answer those two questions for you about the solutions, why those aren't on the companion site, and then also the teacher's access to the clickstream report. Is there anything else I can help you guys with right now?
I think you've given us a nice overview.
Okay, good. And then I just want to remind you about the PowerPoint that I did send you guys. This is makes it really easy to use. And if you do have a quicker presentation where you can't necessarily have time to get into MindTap to show the simulations, near the end of this PowerPoint, there's two versions. Starting with slide 19, there's kind of a quick simulation set, and then starting at slide 25, I have even more screenshots if you want to show more. But the nice thing about this slide, I'm just going to play it for you when we're talking about the new simulations. This first slide is kind of showing how okay, this is what Sage 50 real professional software looks like today. This is what QuickBooks looks like today. And this is what our new simulations look like. So as you can see, they have an updated interface that kind of looks more like QuickBooks, but it's also streamlined and slimmed down a little bit, right? So it's going to do everything that a QuickBooks or a Peachtree or an Excel could do, but it was made for students so that they don't have to spend days and days trying to learn the interface. They just need to be able to prove and practice their accounting skills. And then the rest of these slides, there are notes in here that you can talk about, but it talks kind of about the main screens and features that we showed you live. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a wonderful resource.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys so much. I'll send you guys the recording once it saves to my computer, and I'll answer those other 2 questions. And if there's anything else I can help you with, please let me know.
Okay, great.
Appreciate it.
Okay,
Thanks
thanks
so much,
guys.
Thank
Angela.
Have a good one.
You too.
You too.